I want to talk to you about the payday lending rule. Now, I think the payday lending rule's purpose is pretty simple. And I think actually most Americans, regardless of side, would agree on this. That lenders should figure out up front whether a borrower is able to pay back a loan. And to make sure that consumers don't get caught up in this revolving cycle of debt by folks that don't have the same kind of regulatory oversight that our traditional lending institutions do. Now, you've been in this job a few months, acting in this job. Did you order the Bureau to engage in a rulemaking process to reconsider the rule on the payday lending?
Sorry, yes, sir.
And how would revoking the rule or changing it help consumers, particularly consumers who are living paycheck to paycheck?
Senator, I don't automatically conclude that making an indication to revisit the rule assumes that we will be revoking the rule or even changing the rule. I have the right under the statute to revisit the rules, which I'm doing, but we have not arrived at any preconceived notions of outcomes. That would violate the Administrative Procedures Act, which we have not done.
But, sir, my understanding is this rulemaking took a number of years. It was a subject of a great deal of scrutiny. I believe there was industry input as well as consumer input. And I guess I really wonder why in your first few months of coming into this acting role that this would rise to the top of a priority that would say we need to relook at the practices of payday lenders, which I think most folks would agree is a last resort financial tool, and one that was absolutely appropriate for this Bureau to take on.
Again, I think it was appropriate for it to take on, although I think you could make the argument that the statute simply says you have to supervise this industry, which may not include regulating. Different story for another day, perhaps. But why was it at the top of the list? Because it was the last thing the previous director did on his way out the door. There was a bunch of public criticism or questions as to whether or not it had been rushed. So for a variety of reasons, I thought it was entirely appropriate in my role as acting director to do that the very first thing. In fact, I think it did the first or second day I was there.
Mr. Mulvaney, I think there was a great deal of work that went, and I think the previous director took those actions because of an ongoing need, a need that people on both sides of the aisle had discussed for a long time. I was disappointed you took that as your first action.